So, ladies and gentlemen, we have our Q&A session right now. If anybody wants to ask some questions. Yeah.
Hello. Hi Vivek, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, so I'll ask you a very generic question. Part of your movie has this clipping where it says someone from the background is saying it's in Churachandpur we call it a war of the language.
Yes.
So I would like you to answer on this. You being an outsider, coming to this periphery of Northeast where I have also traveled a bit. So
we have traveled together also.
Yeah, so in every 200, 300 kilometers, the entire tribe, the township changes, the language changes. So how difficult is it for an outsider, very generically, not photographic question, how difficult is it to maneuver and report on these peripheries?
Well, most of the Northeast, interestingly enough, most people speak English. But handshake and a smile always gets you in everywhere, I think. People are quite generous, like I said. You just put your hand out, give them a big smile, you say, please come in. And most places, they don't even close doors. So, even with so much violence happening, people freely walk into each other's homes and they expect me to do the same. The idea is to also be a little open in the way you look at the culture and to not come here with any prejudice at all. In as far as language is concerned, there is the government has to be really responsible for integrating communities across language barriers. See what's happened in Nagaland. What would have happened if Nagaland did not have Nagamese? Some of the tribes don't even speak each other's language at all, right? So when it was first brought in, that was one way to integrate them. Assamese could be considered one way of integrating people again, but there's a problem with that. You can't force a language onto another people because language is an extremely sensitive issue because everyone attaches their identity to the language. And what happened in Darjeeling this year again with Mamta Giri declaring that Bengali will be taught in schools in Darjeeling, and even though they said it's going to be a third language, but everyone was up in arms, and that blockade and that situation lasted a good 3+ months, almost 4 months, through which people suffered, everyone suffered. So language is a sensitive issue in as far as you can't push a language down somebody's throat, but the government has to find a way of integrating these people. But like all conflict is definitely finally about money and language. That's what I think. So if you really want to understand the conflict, you have to really find out where the money is coming from and where the money is going, really.
Yeah, so there's a lot of young photographers here who would, in coming few years, would like to, report on the lines. A lot of them are probably interested in documentary style of photography and would like to report on subjects close to home. So, any word of advice how to approach in general terms?
I will start with how I started. I have spoken about this to a few people. I was working at a newspaper and I was only shooting some images locally. Anything and everything, like as you sent on all kinds of assignments. Some RWA president's portrait, or there's a protest happening at Jantar Mantar in Delhi, or in the evening you'll be shooting a fashion show, then some wake person's portrait again, or like a Vox Pop, you'd go with a reporter to the metro station and just do like mug shots of like 10 people, like one after the other, and they get like a quote from them, and I was getting really bored doing that stuff actually, which is when so the only access I had to internet was at the office, and I was looking for stories to report on, also because I'm really conditioned to shooting in Delhi, so I was looking for a really underreported area. So MSF, Medicine Sans Frontiers, used to come out with a list of the most underreported regions in the world every year back then. I'm talking 2005, and Northeast India was, I think, on number 6 or something in 2005. I said, okay, let me start doing some research. So I started doing some research. It took me a good 6 odd months to do the research, get in touch with people. It was much more difficult 10, 11 years back getting in touch with people. So I got in touch with people. Some of them came to Delhi. I read as much as I could about, and I wanted to report on the internally displaced persons problem, which is like IDPs are refugees in their own country. And I read, but no amount of reading can really take away from real field experience. So one day I decided to just go. And I went for 15 days to Kokrajhar. That was my first story. And then I got, first you go looking for a story, and then the story starts to pull you in. And then like one story pulled me to another story. So I was finding myself in all kinds of places. I was in Karbi Anglong suddenly, and I was staying in a village for 15 days, but I happened to go to Difu one day, and suddenly I found out in the newspapers there's something happening. A huge operation against VBIGs had started in Manipur back then in late 2006. So a lot of the Kuki population who were living in Chandel and all, while retreating, the militants had planted landmines, so there were incapacitations and villages were fleeing, they were getting into Myanmar and finally entering back into India at Moreh. So I decided to report on this as well. And I was just following my feet really. And like I said, a shake hand and a big smile, and people gave me numbers, and so the stories pulled me so far that I spent 11 years doing it, going back and forth. Yes, that's my piece of advice. Be pragmatic, go and shoot. I think that's so important. And go and gain that experience, and you just keep getting better at it. With every story, with every image, and no amount of studying at a photography school or a journalism school can actually teach you like field journalism, how it's done. How are you with people? And that you might be a little shy in the beginning, but you'll just get better at it. Everyone does. I also started off as a novice only, and at least. And you'll start to challenge yourself more, maybe find interesting ways of telling the story photographically, or like I said, through prose. I came back to writing much later when I thought that I'd spend enough time photographing. And that's my piece of advice.
Because we have known each other for quite some time now, and I've been following your work. So I've seen you, and also we have Raj, who is a writer himself on photography. So I also wanted to ask you this. Most of your work are heavily text oriented, like you do a lot of photos accompanied by a huge text compilation.
I'll tell you how I work.
So the question basically is, for a young photographer who is starting out, how important is the art of inculcating this art of writing? How important is it for younger lot?
See, writing. See, I was trained as a normal reporter, as a journalist. That's what I did. I started journalism, and I wrote for a newspaper before I got into television at all. And in television also, most of my work involved writing, writing scripts for God knows.
That's
what.
for you.
Yes,
in general,
so it is. Excuse me. It's important. The sooner you start, the better. I think if you're going to stick to journalism, because going forward, people need.
No, even in the art circuit, writing is always important, right? A lot of things comes through. A lot of times, don't you think it kind of goes hand in hand?
Yes, you should be able to describe what your work means to you, or I find it very difficult to explain my work as an artist, because I consider myself a journalist and not so much an artist. Like I said, it's a mere coincidence that the images are happening, but they're all about stories. They're not so much about it's exactly what I'm seeing. And so how I normally work when I'm doing this writing and photography together, because most of this is self-commissioned work in the Northeast, so later in the night, which is also good light for me. Most afternoons are spent reporting, sitting down, talking to people, that's where you build the friendships that last you a very long time, that allow you to come back, that, and people feel friendly enough to call you if something is happening, and find ways for you to get to a place where it would be difficult for any other person to go. So that access is half the battle won. So once you have that access, you can continue working on stories very long term, and if something happens, you'll be the first to find out, and be in a place at the right time, which is so important for images also.
And also I think for the newer lot, once you're reporting from the field, the most important thing is to be humble.
Of course, always humble. Always humble.
Understanding the nuances of
be very open, be extremely kind to people, don't take your prejudices about, I could bring my daily prejudices to any other place, but I don't want to have those prejudices. So initially it might be an effort, but it will start to come to you much more naturally once you do more and more of this work. And of course be ethical in whatever work you do.
Thank you.
Hi Vivek.
Hi.
I want to respond to actually what Arka was saying and try to put it in context with your work, and then I have a subsequent question for you.
Yeah.
With regard to the importance of writing, I actually partially disagree with him, and this is while being somebody who enjoys words myself. I feel at the end of the day it really depends on the kind of work that you are doing, and hence the medium you choose. So for instance, Vivek chooses photography, he chooses video, he chooses sound, because the way he's used the sound in the film that we just saw, I think elevated the impact of his storytelling to an even greater degree than just what the visuals did. And while if you go to his website, you will see a lot of exhaustive writing which is required for the kind of story he's saying, yet we could at least partially get the impact of what he's communicating even today, while there is no writing and while the words are not directly in context to the pictures he's showing. So we all have to find our own way, as long
like
as
I
we
said,
communicate.
if I may interject,
Yeah.
like I said, there's no one way of telling a story well, and that's what I believe. Sometimes only the writing will do. And sometimes, because the access you will have will dictate what kind of a story you will come out with. So sometimes just the writing, maybe one picture, can make a story really great. You can report it really well. Sometimes could just be images, and sometimes it could just be everything put together. And going forth, we have a great online medium of showing works in such a dynamic fashion that there's no end to how you can communicate, and communicate effectively. I say effectively because it's so important that we can go and make random images and do all kinds of trickery with it, but if it's not effectively communicated in whichever medium you want, then it's not worth your while, I think. So it's a lot of work, in the sense that it takes a lot for you to understand it also, because it's taken me a lot of time to understand sound and the importance of it, and the importance of video also, because sometimes a testimony can just really break you here, like in the field, because some of it is very emotional stuff which is being thrown at you, and at that point in time a portrait will not work. The videos also help me in writing, the audios also help me in writing, because if it's for a print publication, you can't use audio or or video stuff, so they also go into the story. Then they become the written word from the video testimony or just the audio recording. They become like the written word and just go with images. So like I said, you just have to navigate this space and try and find a unique way of telling a story every time.